Break that down is former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, President Trump and his legal team first filed the request on Monday seeking a more thorough review of that seized material. A special master would isolate anything that should be shielded from government review because of executive privilege. How impactful could this end up being?
Well, it's very impactful. First of all, special master would look at all of the documents and make sure that they are within the scope of the search warrant. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the broadness of the search warrant, but the specific documents that would apply under the alleged criminal statutes are going to be very important to call out. But to your point, the executive privilege and the attorney-client privilege documents should never be seen in the first place by the federal government. I worry, since they've already had it for several weeks, that they've been through the documents and can't unsee what they have seen. But at the same time, I think a special master will bring some discipline to this process that I think for a lot of us felt like it had no discipline and that it was just an overbroad government, exercise of their power. But I think this is a good step, and it shows the judge is engaged.
Well, that was going to be my next question. But let's kind of break this down. So obviously we have two judges on different sides of this. Reinhart obviously was the one who approved the initial search warrant. This new judge, Trump appointee, Aileen Cannon, I believe the name is, that judge is looking at this through the lens of like, hey, the law is there to protect Trump. Whereas I see it as Judge Reinhart is like the law is there to protect the government against people like Trump. What do you make of that?
Yeah, Carl, we're two different levels of judicial review here. Judge Reinhart is a magistrate judge. He had a probable cause standard. This Judge Cannon is a district court judge, presidentially appointed. Magistrates are appointed by the court. So I think Judge Cannon obviously is going to apply a different legal standard to appoint this. And also, I think Judge Cannon probably has a better sensitivity to the political dynamics of this, making sure, again, this is the legitimacy of institutions is always questioned. And, in the American system where the people are sovereign, these courts have to not only be independent, but have an appearance of independence. And so I think that's one of the things that Judge Cannon is taking into account in appointing a special master.
I think it would be refreshing if they did find somebody to be that special master who follows what you're saying, the appearance and hopefully actually independent from this. Trump's lawyers are also requesting an inventory of all the items seized during that raid, one including more detail than the FBI's report. As we know, there were the classified documents, I believe it was 184, but then within that, passports, newspapers, magazines, other items. This was made public, but what do you think is the motive behind it?
Well, remember, and it kind of dovetails with the special master appointment, and that is that they grabbed his passports, which weren't part of the search warrant. And so what else did they grab that wasn't part of the search warrant? And I think a detailed inventory, box A, 15 does not help the president and his legal team understand what was taken and whether it was lawfully taken. And it's hard to argue that something was not lawfully taken if you don't know what it was in the first place. And I mean, I would ask your viewers to, think about all the boxes in their basement or their garage and try to remember everything that's in those boxes. And so, I think it is a very appropriate step to give a much more detailed inventory of what was taken as part of the search warrant, so that the defense and President Trump's team can argue whether or not that was proper to be taken.
Yeah, and the clearest example of this is like them saying, we don't have your passports. Oh, by the way, here are your passports. It's like this is the kind of lack of accountability that the John Q. public is seeing like, hey, wait a minute, like I'm pretty sure that I don't want the government to be able to do that to me. But let's talk about the precedent of executive privilege and attorney-client privilege. Now, the Justice Department is hiding a lot of things in this affidavit because they're considering part of an ongoing investigation. Let's talk about Crossfire Hurricane. We know Trump was investigating this. We know he had documents on it. If they're in there, and then that same argument, if they're part of Trump's ongoing investigation with private attorneys, attorney-client privilege, and now they've seized it, the government may have information to defend against something that might be coming, no?
Well, Carl, that's a good point, and we know that President Trump had an interest in the Russian collusion hoax, in the documents that were used or supported or might have been involved in that. We understand through people that were there at the time, at the end of the Trump administration, that he had declassified these documents. We know that because, for example, John Ratcliffe, the former director of national intelligence, has said so, and they pushed a lot of those documents out, and so did our friend Kash Patel and Rick Grinnell. And so, these are the documents that I worry that if the government did think that they were harmful to the government's interest, not because of a classification, because of an embarrassment standard, then we may never see those documents again. And I think that's something I'm listening very carefully to both the experts and to the Trump team to understand where their process was in the review of certain documents relating to Crossfire Hurricane.
Yeah, we're all crazy, a lot of legal mumbo jumbo that I don't begin to understand. But sir, we appreciate you coming on to break it down for us.
All right, thank you, Carl. Good to see you.
All right, folks.